The tension in the air was suffocating. The room fell silent as I stood there, the truth I had hidden for so long finally unraveling in front of our friends and family. "You forged my signature for a $250,000 loan," I said, my voice trembling but firm. His face flushed with anger, and before I could react, he grabbed a nearby stick and swung it hard, striking me in front of everyone. "Hello everyone, my name is Olivia Brooks, and I'm 34 years old. I never imagined that my marriage to Eric, the man I thought I'd spend the rest of my life with, would end in violence." We were at a party, my party, celebrating my promotion at a marketing firm here in Chicago. But what was supposed to be a night of joy had turned into a nightmare, and it all started with a betrayal that cut deeper than anything I had ever experienced. It wasn't always like this. When I first met Eric, he was charming and full of promise. He worked as a financial consultant, and his career seemed stable, at least from the outside. We married after just 2 years of dating, and life seemed perfect. I had no idea then what kind of man he really was, and how his ambition and greed would eventually tear us apart. About a year ago, I noticed that something was off. Our joint savings account, which we had both agreed to build for our future, began to deplete. Eric always had an excuse. "I'm investing in a new business," or "there were unexpected expenses this month." I trusted him, even when doubts started to creep in. He was my husband, and I believed we were a team. But then, everything changed one afternoon when a letter arrived in the mail. It was from a bank I had never heard of, and the words on the envelope made my stomach churn. "Loan approval, $250,000. I remember the world slowing down as I opened the letter, disbelief washing over me as I read the contents. Eric had taken out a massive loan in my name, without my knowledge, without my consent. My signature had been forged. He had done this behind my back, gambling away our financial security to fund some secretive business venture that I knew nothing about. At first, I didn't confront him. I needed time to process the shock. But as the days passed, the weight of the deception became unbearable. I could barely look at him without feeling the sting of betrayal. Finally, one evening after dinner, I decided to confront him. "Eric, we need to talk," I said, keeping my voice as calm as possible. "What's this about?" he asked, not even looking up from his phone. "This," I replied, sliding the letter across the table. He glanced at it, and for a moment, I saw a flicker of panic in his eyes before he quickly masked it with indifference. "Olivia, it's just business. You wouldn't understand." "I wouldn't understand," I repeated, my voice rising. "You forged my signature and took out a $250,000 loan in my name. That's not just business, Eric. That's betrayal." He sighed and leaned back in his chair, as if he were tired of my accusations. "Look, I did it for us. The business needed an infusion of cash, and it's going to pay off. You just need to trust me." But I couldn't trust him, not anymore. The man sitting across from me was not the man I had married. This wasn't just about money. It was about the lies, the deception, the complete disregard for me and our future. I walked out of the room that night without saying another word, but I knew things would never be the same. Weeks passed, and the distance between Eric and me grew. I kept the discovery to myself, unsure of how to proceed. But when the night of the party arrived, I could no longer stay silent. Surrounded by our friends, colleagues, and family, I had to let the truth out. The party was supposed to be a celebration of my promotion to senior marketing director. It was held at a chic rooftop venue in downtown Chicago, overlooking the city's glittering skyline. Eric had insisted on throwing the party, and I let him, even though things between us were barely holding together. I smiled and made small talk with the guests, but underneath the surface, the storm was brewing. It wasn't until halfway through the evening, as the conversations flowed and the drinks were poured, that I saw my opportunity. Eric was talking to his business partners, trying to paint a picture of success that didn't exist. I walked over, my heart pounding in my chest, and interrupted. "You're not telling them the whole story, are you?" I said, my voice louder than I intended. The group turned to look at me, confusion written on their faces. Eric shot me a warning glance. "Olivia, this isn't the time." "Oh, I think it's the perfect time," I said, holding up the letter I had been carrying in my purse. "Why don't you tell everyone how you forged my signature and took out a $250,000 loan in my name?" A shocked silence fell over the group. Eric's face paled, and for a moment I thought he might try to deny it. But instead, his expression hardened. "You're really going to do this here?" he hissed, stepping closer to me, his voice low and dangerous. "In front of everyone?" "I am," I replied, my voice steady despite the trembling in my hands. "You lied to me. You've been lying for months." His eyes darkened with rage. "You don't understand anything," he growled, grabbing my arm. "You've never understood." Before I could respond, Eric snapped. He reached for the wooden stick that was propped up against the wall, a decorative piece meant to add rustic charm to the venue. With a roar of anger, he swung it at me, striking me across the side. Pain shot through my body as I fell to the floor, gasps and screams filling the room. Everything happened so fast. One moment I was standing, the next I was crumpled on the ground, clutching my side where the stick had hit me. The room erupted into chaos. Some people rushed to my side, others were shouting, and Eric just stood there, breathing heavily, the stick still in his hand. "Get away from her," someone yelled, and I felt hands pulling me up, guiding me away from Eric. My head was spinning, my body throbbing with pain, but all I could think about was the betrayal. The man I had once trusted, the man I had loved, had just hit me in front of everyone. That night marked the end of my marriage. I left the party and went straight to a hospital to have my injuries checked. As I sat in the sterile room, waiting for the doctor, I made the decision that I would no longer be a victim. I would fight back, legally and emotionally. Eric's betrayal ran deeper than I had ever imagined, and now he had crossed a line that could never be forgiven. The next morning, I called a lawyer, Sandra Jones, a no-nonsense attorney with a reputation for winning tough cases. I explained everything to her, the loan fraud, the forgery, the assault, and she listened intently, her face calm but determined. "Eric's in serious trouble," she said after I finished explaining. "We're going to press charges for both the loan fraud and the assault. He won't get away with this." Over the next few weeks, Sandra and I worked tirelessly to gather all the evidence we needed. I provided the loan documents showing my forged signature, and we obtained witness statements from the people who had seen Eric hit me at the party. It was a long and painful process, reliving the events over and over again, but I knew it was necessary. As the court date approached, I felt a mixture of anxiety and relief. I was nervous about facing Eric again, but I was also determined to see justice served. On the day of the hearing, I walked into the courtroom with my head held high, even though my heart was racing. Eric was there, sitting with his lawyer, looking as though nothing had happened. He didn't look at me once. The trial was long and exhausting, but Sandra was relentless in her arguments. She laid out the evidence clearly, showing the forged loan documents and recounting the events of the party where Eric had attacked me. Eric's lawyer tried to paint me as an emotional, overreacting wife, but the facts were undeniable. Finally, after hours of testimony and deliberation, the judge delivered his verdict: guilty. Eric was sentenced to 5 years in prison for loan fraud and domestic assault. He was also ordered to pay restitution for the debt he had incurred in my name. Hearing the judge's words was like a weight being lifted off my shoulders. I had fought back, and I had won. Eric was finally going to face the consequences of his actions, and I was free to rebuild my life. Despite the courtroom victory, the aftermath of the betrayal and violence left me emotionally drained. Winning the legal battle against Eric didn't erase the scars he left behind, both physically and mentally. But it was the first step in reclaiming my life, my dignity, and my independence. I took time off from work to heal and focus on myself. My colleagues at the marketing firm were supportive and understanding, especially my closest friend, Sarah, who had been by my side through the entire ordeal. She often came by my apartment with takeout, offering her shoulder when I needed it and distracting me with stories about the office. The days that followed were filled with reflection and self-care. Therapy became a lifeline for me, allowing me to process the anger, grief, and confusion that had built up over the years. My therapist, Dr. Stevens, helped me understand that none of this was my fault, and that it was okay to feel vulnerable while learning how to rebuild my strength. Each session brought clarity and a renewed sense of purpose. As time passed, I decided it was time to leave the apartment Eric and I had once shared. Too many memories lingered there, and I needed a fresh start in a space that was truly mine. With the money I had saved and the compensation I received from the court ruling, I bought a small but cozy townhouse on the outskirts of Chicago. It wasn't extravagant, but it was mine, a place where I could begin anew without the shadow of my past hanging over me. Decorating the house became a therapeutic project. Each room reflected a part of me: vibrant, bold colors, modern furniture, and framed artwork that I had collected over the years. I even created a home office where I could focus on my work, taking on new clients and projects that excited me. The space represented the new chapter I was entering, one where I was in full control of my life and decisions. About 6 months after the trial, I attended a networking event hosted by my firm. It was a way to ease back into the professional world, something I had been avoiding since the fallout with Eric. As I mingled with colleagues and potential clients, I felt the familiar spark of passion for my career reignite. At the event, I ran into a man named Andrew, a financial advisor who had recently moved to Chicago. We struck up a conversation about marketing strategies, and I was surprised by how easy it was to talk to him. For the first time in what felt like forever, I didn't feel weighed down by the past. We exchanged contact information, and though I wasn't sure if I was ready for anything romantic, it felt good to connect with someone new. Over time, I began to accept that the pain Eric had caused me wouldn't disappear overnight. Healing was a journey, not a destination, and I had to be patient with myself. The anger and hurt that once consumed me began to fade, replaced by a sense of peace and closure. I stayed focused on my career, growing my reputation within the marketing industry. My promotion to Senior Marketing Director had been the highlight of my professional life, and I was determined not to let what had happened derail my progress. I poured myself into work, and soon I was taking on high-profile clients and leading campaigns that garnered national attention. One day, out of the blue, I received a letter from Eric. He had been in prison for nearly a year at that point, and I hadn't heard from him since the trial. The letter was short, apologetic, and full of regret. He claimed he had changed, that he had reflected on his actions and wanted to make amends. But as I read the letter, I realized something important. I didn't need his apology. I didn't need his validation or his remorse to move on with my life. I had already done the hard work of healing, and I wasn't about to let his words pull me back into the past. I shredded the letter and threw it away, a final act of closure on that chapter of my life. As the months turned into a year, I found myself thriving in ways I never thought possible. My townhouse became a home, a sanctuary where I could unwind after a long day's work. I had reconnected with old friends, built new relationships, and even started dating again, though I was careful and took things slow. Andrew and I remained in touch, and our friendship blossomed into something more over time. He was kind, patient, and understanding of the walls I had built around myself. For the first time in a long time, I felt safe with someone. There was no rush, no pressure, just the simple joy of getting to know someone who respected and valued me. One day, as I sat on the porch of my townhouse, sipping a cup of coffee and watching the world go by, I realized just how far I had come. I had gone from being a victim of betrayal and abuse to a woman who had reclaimed her life, her independence, and her sense of self-worth. Eric had tried to tear me down, but I had risen stronger than ever. I no longer needed validation from anyone, not from Eric, not from the world. I had learned to stand on my own 2 feet, to trust myself, and to fight for what I deserved. And in the process, I had found a strength I never knew I had. This is my story, a story of betrayal, resilience, and ultimately, triumph. Eric's actions may have left scars, but those scars were a reminder of the battles I had fought and won. I am Olivia Brooks, and I have reclaimed my life, my future, and my happiness. As I look ahead, I know that whatever challenges come my way, I will face them with the same strength and determination that carried me through the darkest times. Because I am no longer just surviving, I am thriving. Thank you for listening to Olivia's journey of strength and resilience. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more powerful stories. Share your thoughts below. We'd love to hear from you.